And then I guess at this point we come to the XP multipliers on this and the way it went. Recall we started at 50% on week 1, and we gradually, by the end of it, worked our way down to 20 and 10% XP multipliers for skills less than 70 and greater than or equal to 70, respectively, while peaking at a plus 150% at the very middle of the period here. And one thing I did with this I thought was really important to do to visualize this thing was I put the multipliers on a graph. I don't know if anybody's done that before, but if you're watching the video version of the show on YouTube, you can actually see that graph right now. And we felt how sharp this green greater than 70 line dropped, didn't we?
Oh, yeah. It hurt.
For sure.
It hurt.
It was a harsh change considering I started with Elite Dungeons 3 and then the XP for skills went up. I had been, at the top end of XP rates for the whole time, and then when it fell off, that's pretty much when I fell off playing as hard as I was too. So
you're not the only one. I know other people who did that. And this really raises the question that maybe there needed to be more transparency in XP multipliers, because they changed it and they pulled it back and they said it was going to peak at 3x or plus 200, but they changed that and they pulled that back and they didn't say what it was going to be. But we were all under the impression that they do it in a bell curve fashion, or it would follow the same trajectory going down that it took going up. But oh no, we had this huge drop for skills greater than 70 from plus 1.5x to plus 70% XP going from week 8 to week 9. And that was just massive when it comes down to it. And I think, and this is where the transparency would have been good, you offer up a bit of transparency on this, I think people would have played the game entirely different. Because if I would have, if I would have known the way this was going to go, I could have got my 120 archaeology.
Yeah, I would have. I definitely would have planned things out differently. I mean, I played the whole time with the understanding that the XP curve was going to go down the same way that it came up. Had I known it was going to be so different, it would have really changed how I played. I might have rushed for more, to get. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the right strategy would have been at that point, but there was a difference. You had to think about, like, is it more efficient to get my skills up to 70 and get as many of them as I can while the multiplier is high versus over 70 when the multiplier is lower.
Yep.
It definitely would have changed things had I been able to plan that out better.
And once again, this comes to managing expectations, managing communication, and not doing what the vocal minority wants, because we have to question again how many of the people who were complaining about the initial XP multipliers actually played.
Do you think if the XP did go to that, 300%, would that have been a little bit too much, though? Because I felt like the 2.5 times multiplier was already pretty significant, but they didn't have to drop it off a cliff the way they did, where they could have, evened it out better as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it necessarily has to be an either or. Like, the 2.5 could have been, that could have been a top end of things.
Yeah, like
the way that it dropped was just, for me, it was way
I think it's better to focus on the drop rather than what could have been with the with the plus 200 instead of plus 150. And I mean, when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, it really raises a question as well. What would the main game look like if XP was increased, not necessarily to a factor of 2, but just give us a consistent 30 to 50% XP buff and everything? What would the main game look like in that? How would interaction be affected, and what would that do for RuneScape's endgame? I think that's a big question that comes out of this.
I don't think it's as detrimental as people think. In fact, I think it'd be the reverse.
Oh
Because
no,
it felt
I'm
good and exciting.
I'm
and
coming in line to agreeing with you on that, and my only
Yeah.
concern is even more so now. What happens after that? Right?
If they were to increase the XP, I think eventually there would be the minority at the top end would start saying for prestige skills, which is something I've always been against because I like having
Yeah.
the completion feeling. So I'm not necessarily on board, but I don't think that if they're gonna start selling XP as well or like buffs, that might be where we're headed. But as far as the multiplier, I think they use Fresh Start.
Oh, you kind of broke up there. But I mean, Tanis and I've talked about that before. You start selling XP multipliers at this point, right? So,
Mhm.
and you know, the market will say if that's a good decision to make. I believe in the market making those decisions and whether or not Jagex feels their customer base would handle that. But
Well, you got to ask yourself, Shane, what is the attention span of a modern gamer?
yeah,
And do they want to spend 6 to 8 months grinding their asses off, boring grinds, to get to do the content that they want to do? I mean, part of that was what was a goal of Fresh Start 2 was to be able to bring players back, but to get those accounts leveled up to be able to do meaningful, current
and
content.
that was the complaint, is that people didn't want people having a shortcut to the Max Guild.
Which
is stupid when you think about it, because that's how you add more players to the game.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very short-sighted.
So, and I mean, there's just so much about these XP multipliers where I think this is where the core controversy of Fresh Start comes in, and I'm surprised, and maybe it's because these people weren't playing it, the people who you said were the ones when you were Googling and YouTubing Fresh Start, why this was never a major discussion point through that. Maybe it's because they weren't playing, but I feel like this is one of the biggest things that hasn't been talked about with this, what this XP multiplier meant. And oh no, here we are, second episode of the year. Oh, we've just come up with another monthly bit topic. What if RuneScape XP multipliers were increased by, a factor of 30% or so?